You're now listening to Sound Talent Media. Check out more shows at soundtalentmedia.com.
TIAA is on a mission. Why? Because 54% of Black Americans don't have enough savings to retire. So in collaboration with big-name artists like Wyclef Jean, TIAA released Paper Right, new music inspiring a new financial future. With 100% of streaming sales going to a nonprofit that teaches students how to invest. Stream Paper Right now and help close the gap.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the podcast. Today, I'm talking to you, at least for the intro of this episode, from a little bit different place than the normal Shred Shed studio. Today, I'm talking to you from a bedroom here at a bed and breakfast in Independence, Oregon, where my family and I like to come for whatever we can, really. Getaways. This time we're here for Mother's Day and just enjoying ourselves, and I needed to step away for a moment to record the intro for this, so your episode will be on time as usual. Today I'm talking to Rob from the band Incendiary, and we really had a great conversation. I think you're going to enjoy this. We talk about gear, we talk about songwriting, we talk about comedy. It's one of those conversations that just goes all over the place but flows oh so well, and I think you're going to enjoy this whether or not you are a fan of hardcore or heavy music in general. This is just a couple music nerds having a really great chat, and I think you're really going to enjoy this. One quick bit of business, and then we will jump right in. So, I just want to remind you that if you buy any strings from Stringjoy this month, you know, Stringjoy, the company that I'm a part of. If you buy anything from us this month, you will be entered to win an American Professional Jazz Master. So go to stringjoy.com for all those details. I know I've plugged it occasionally here and there on the last few episodes, but I want to make sure that anybody who is interested in that had the opportunity to get involved. So go to stringjoy.com for those details, and I won't bother you with any other business. At least not on this intro. Let's get right into this one with Rob from Incendiary. Here we go. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Tone Mob Podcast, the show about guitar stuff, occasionally, sometimes. I'm your host, Blake Weiland. With me today, I have Rob Nobile from Incendiary. What's going on, dude?
What's up, Blake? How's it going? Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. We're just going to pretend we didn't talk for, 7 minutes beforehand. This is the first time we've ever said a word to each other right now.
I'm practicing my acting chops, so it's good.
Oh, man. So how have things been going for you guys? You guys, I don't even know where to start. When there's a band that's been around and done as much as you guys have, it's hard for me to know where to initiate the conversation, because I know this isn't your first interview. It's not, a lot of the pedal builders and stuff I talk to, that's their first time ever being interviewed.
Right.
So I really get to dig into the nitty gritty. But with you guys have been active for so long. Man, it's almost like, what's new? Let's start there and work backwards.
No, it's wild. So I mean, we pretty much go in waves as far as, how active we are. But, we have our new record coming out actually in a couple weeks at this point on May 26th. So, so we've been, just doing the runs of, podcasts and, all that fun stuff, and going to be firing up more shows than we have been doing in the past few months, firing that up in the next couple of months once the record is out. So this is the best time, it's hectic, but it's all for fun things. And, I'm excited to just be in it now.
Yeah, for sure. I'm sure that this, well, maybe I'm not sure. Well, I should ask the question. Has that cycle changed in the modern era? I know obviously back in 2007, you probably weren't doing a lot of podcasts, even though they kind of existed back then. Not really. I mean, not to the level they do now. But was the kind of media cycle for releasing a record the same, or has it totally changed?
No, I mean, at least for us, really this record, and then 2017, crazily enough, was the last record that we put out. that was a milestone. So there was a media cycle for that, and then before that was 2013. That was our record prior, and that really didn't exist. But that's to say, like, it's not. Is it how the world was and how the actual industry was, or is that because nobody really cared about our band? Which I completely understand. You know what I mean? So it's funny. So it depends, like, I guess what your situation is, what the status is. But even podcasting, I know, I must have gotten into that maybe 15 years ago, just listening to podcasts, things like that. Actually, shout out to Bill Burr for that.
There you go. Yeah.
I remember he started this thing called a podcast. I didn't know what it was. He used to call into it, I think, on a phone, into some hotline. And yeah, I think that was like 15, 18 years ago. And then
That's
since
wild.
that, I started listening to a bunch, from there. But it's cool to just be a part of this stuff now.
Yeah, sometimes I get the question, it's like what do you do? And then how long you been doing it and all that. And I was like, I've been doing the podcast since 2015. And some people are like, wow, so you were really early to it. I'm like, well, I guess in the broader sense, as far as like people knowing what it was,
right?
Yes, but no, it'd been going for a long time before that.
Yeah, I guess like anything, it's like a slow burn in the beginning, and then I think probably a lot with like the pandemic and people had a lot of downtime and more free time. That kind of blew up, and then I think more podcasts have popped up because of that. Not only are there more listeners, but there are more people doing it.
Yep.
And it's pretty remarkable how successful it is, and how it's just free range for anybody to really do and talk about what they want, which I think is amazing.
It's funny that the people who I think most people would agree kind of started the mainstream popularity of it are comedian or comedy adjacent people. I remember like I first heard about podcasting when Corolla went off the air and went to start his podcast. And I think Tom Green had one at the same time, and this was, geez, I don't even know. Yeah, like you said, like 15 years ago or longer. And I remember thinking, how are they going to do that? They're going to put it on the internet and then you download it. And then, but like, I guess the iPhone really changed everything, right? Because I remember I was the guy like going to my computer, downloading the episode, loading it on my iPod, and then hooking it up in my car and listening on the way to work, which is just hasn't happened in years.
Yeah, and it's interesting to see. Even you were naming Corolla and some of those guys, like even like Conan. When he was off of TV, he started his podcast. But you see a lot of these big people in entertainment that are focusing more on podcasting. That's also more like the most lucrative too, which is wild. And and it just helps everything else indirectly, with all those comedian shows. I'm like heavily into the comedy world and like the New York City scene. I'm just a big fan of it. I don't do comedy, but I am just a huge fan of it. So I can talk about that all day.
I would love to talk about that actually. I'm not like a huge, there's not a big scene for it here in Portland. It exists. And my wife and I just went to a comedy pop-up show that was a lot of fun, but it's not the same way it is in New York City. I've experienced the New York City comedy scene a handful of times, and it's like, this is a different thing altogether. Yeah. This would be addictive if I lived here.
No, for sure. There's just so much of it, and that's where so many successful people are, cut their teeth and kind of get into it, and then branch out from there and go on to be even more successful than they already are. But it's cool to have it that close, and that accessible, especially to see it live.
It's interesting to see, and I'm sure you can comment on this. I'm always looking at comedians who, I know it's super hard. It's like, I think one of the hardest art forms out there. I tried it in front of a small handful of friends. My friend had a roast for his 30th birthday, and we all roasted him. And I was like, I'm good at public speaking. This will be no problem. And I was terrible. And this is all people I know.
Exactly.
I can't imagine doing it in front of a crowd who has no idea who I am. It's rough. But all that to say is I always look at some kind of the business side a little bit. It's just how my brain works. And I'm like, man, a band that can fill up this room, by the time it's all divided up between everybody that's required to get the band there, man, there's not a lot left. But a comedian that can fill it up by himself, maybe he's got a tour manager, maybe they don't, that's actually pretty nice. That's a pretty nice paycheck every night.
You hit the nail on the head. I've said that before, and I've talked because I have friends in stand up too, and I've talked about that where just the paycheck alone and the lack of overhead that comedians have.
Microphone.
It's amazing. As far as you're able to be more successful and sustain. Based on that, as opposed to you're might be splitting money more ways. If you're in a band. But I always thought part of why I love that stand-up world, I'm fascinated by it because there's so many parallels between the music scene and how comedy works.
Okay.
Even touring and everything. So there's pros and cons. So one of the pros of being a comedian, right? You are keeping a lot of that money or most of that money, right? All that's going to you. But at the same time, you're touring all over the place, all over the country. You're in a car by yourself and it's just you. And you're playing these, sketchy towns. You're depressed. You don't have many people to really share the bad times with or the good time. You know what I mean? So I've heard that a lot from comedians. Whereas,
no camaraderie, really.
Exactly. Whereas, all right, you're in a band, whole different type of, I guess, vibe, even though you're doing, the same thing, bouncing around city to city, but at least there is that camaraderie and support system. And then if some, bad thing happens, or if you're just down, at least you have people around you.
Yeah.
So again, two different ways of looking at it and two different, sets of benefits to each. But yeah, it's funny that you said that because I've always thought about that.
Yeah. I mean, it's so much of it's the same, right? The band is touring around in support of their record or trying to get noticed or, whatever, just get in front of as many people as they can. Comedians are doing the same thing. They're just hoping that translates into a different thing, whether that's a, Netflix special today or whether it's it used to be there were comedy albums people used to buy. So the parallels were even stronger, I think. I don't think that happens a lot anymore. When's the last time there was a comedy record put out? I can't even think of it.
I know now it's really just specials. It's all YouTube specials or it's on, Netflix and all those platforms, but an actual record, audio only, man, I can't even remember.
I can't either. The last one I can think of isn't even one that I super love. It's like Bill Engvall or something. And that was 2005 or so.
I remember I had a bunch of Mitch Hedberg records,
I love
especially
Mitch
in college. And, again, that was even before video was very accessible. And that was pretty life changing as far as records and comedy, for me,
Yeah.
But
who were some comedians? Was he one that you got into early? Who were some of the comedians you got into right off the bat?
Well, I was into, I remember watching stand up on TV, flipping through and it would be on, Comedy Central. But I remember, Mitch Hedberg, Dave Attell at the time. Let's see, there was, of course, George Carlin. And
of course. Yeah.
Chris Rock and, Chappelle, all of those, legends who are still legends now. But, just a wide array of, big, huge names like that. And then again, smaller names, people on the radio like Jim Norton. He was another legend from back in the day, still doing it. And then from there, you just start hearing about other comedians. Again, just like music.
Yeah.
You have your favorite bands, favorite records you grew up listening to. And then either through, the credits, the liner notes in the insert, or who they might be shouting out in interviews and things like that, their peers, you start learning about other bands and artists. And that's how you kind of learn about that. And it was the same thing with all those comedy records and just the comedians.
I always wonder how many hardcore kids and punk rockers were created via Metallica wearing a Misfits shirt,
yeah.
I think probably millions, literally. I remember that's the first time I saw the Misfits logo I can't remember which member of Metallica wearing it. And I was like, what's that?
Huh. Exactly.
And it just burned in my brain. And then I saw it later somewhere and I got to find not that Misfits were my entry into that necessarily, but for a lot of people they were.
Yeah. And it shows even back in the day, especially when there were very few outlets to see music.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not seeing it live, you might see it on MTV or, Much Music or whatever it would be.
Right.
And something as simple as, maybe Kirk wearing a Misfits t-shirt or something as like mindless as that might have changed, lives of people, discovering the Misfits or even the band themselves,
Mm-hmm.
getting bigger just because of something as simple as that. So it's cool.
The butterfly effect, man.
Yeah,
It
exactly.
really happens. So when did you get into music?
So I was always into music since, since as long as I can remember, probably before I was even like walking. My parents always had music playing around the house. My dad played the drums when he was younger. He played in cover bands and wedding bands, small stuff like that. So I would watch him play 2 records like in the basement, but he would always be playing and listening to everything from like Lionel Richie,
Mm-hmm.
Diana Ross, Whitney Houston, to Michael Jackson, to Jimi Hendrix, Creedence Clearwater Revival, Rolling Stones, everything in between. So he had a pretty eclectic taste in music, which I think maybe helped me when I, later down the road to just like, love everything, or I could find something to appreciate really in like any type of music, any genre.
Mm-hmm.
But I was always into that. And then, uh, early on, I had an aunt and an uncle who were only like 10, 15 years older than me. So they were like, late teens, early 20s when I was like a
Right.
child. So they were living with my grandparents. So I would go there like every weekend. And my uncle was always listening to, Slayer, Metallica, Anthrax, all that. So that's where I just discovered heavy music, realizing, not even understanding what these bands were, what the context of their, roles were. I just
100%.
knew, like, I heard this and I was like, man, I like that. And it's like hitting me differently than this Lionel Richie song, even though a lot of his music kicks ass too. But
sure,
yeah. But that's how I kind of got down that path with like heavier music. And then I've also always been into like hip hop.
Mm-hmm.
So my uncle was always into like rock and all that, so he got me into that. And my aunt, I remember listening to Beastie Boys and Onyx and Cypress Hill, all that stuff. And again, I was in like 4th grade. Like not even like seeing this stuff yet on MTV or anything, but just like listening, I guess from the purest, most objective, uh, um, position, and just like just again knowing that I was drawn to it, but not understanding anything about it.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But
were you in New York at the time?
Yeah. So that was all on Long Island. So I grew up on Long Island, and that was
the
all
hip
in New
hop.
York.
I think makes more sense if you grow up in that context. Versus the Midwest somewhere. You probably never heard those bands until you got much older, but
it's true.
Being young and hearing it in New York City makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it's cool. Like it was very and again, I feel like hip hop and, whether it was rock, metal, hardcore, whatever, all those genres, hip hop and, like the rock world, they were also, I feel like, very like similar, where again at the time it was kind of like the alternative music to listen to. And I remember as a kid just being like, I don't think I'm supposed to be listening to this. I'm like sneaking into, my aunt's room, taking like CDs off of her shelf and just like sitting there by myself, like listening to this stuff. But they were both like kind of like off the beaten path at the time. And I'm sure that, had something to do with me being so drawn to it, especially that young,
Right. Like feeling like you're not supposed to.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, or this is for adults or whatever the case may be. Yeah. I definitely remember being drawn. I was always into like horror stuff and scary stuff. And that was largely kind of fine with my family as far as like, I'm reading. Yeah, of course, Blake's over there reading a book about mummies because he's a weirdo. That's what I do. But like the heavy music started a lot later. Not super. I mean, the normal time, 12, ish, somewhere in that ballpark. And it was just a world that my family didn't understand at all. At all. So, I was in there, but they were, relatively supportive of it. They didn't they're like, get that out of here. You can't listen to that. It was none of that, but it was definitely like, well, what's that now? Like, what?
Well, exactly. Yeah. You know what? I mean, I had the same parents growing up, like they weren't like overly strict, but at the same time, I mean, my dad was more open because he was into like music. He didn't really care as much, but my mom was real strict. But it was the classic mom, move where it's like, as long as if there's a parental advisory sticker on the CD, then just no question, you're not going to be able to listen to it.
Right.
Or if it's rated R, you're not watching it. Again, I was like really young, but actually like, I remember my uncle and I had this process where he would take me out. So if it was my birthday or whatnot, he would take me to Tower Records. He would buy me all these CDs that I wanted, and any CD that had a parental advisory sticker, we would take the sales sticker off of the cellophane and put it over the parental advisory sticker. It was insane. And like, it was my uncle's idea. So I thanks to him, I had all of these CDs that I probably would have never been able to allowed to have.
Oh man,
but
parental advisory stickers.
Yeah, but that was that was a nice
Thanks,
hack.
Tipper Gore.
Yeah,
thanks a lot, Tipper.
But that was a nice hack back in the day. It was just funny to even think about that, or think about having to do that. When all that stuff existed. But it was cool.
I remember having to do similar thing, like get it unwrapped real quick and take it out and flip it around.
Yes, just flip the book around too if it was on the actual insert.
Right. Well, I know my generation, we grew up with the massive booklet of CDs.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
And so sometimes it was just a matter of getting the CD out, getting it in the booklet, and then just stashing the cover stuff somewhere, kind of lined up on a shelf. You can't see it on the spine, right? Just kind of line it up on the shelf. It'll be fine.
Exactly. But yeah, man, it's funny. I miss looking at all that stuff, holding it.
A funny one I've brought up on the show before. Like, again, my parents were very supportive. Like, my mom, we lived in like this 1,200 square foot house, and I would set my drums up in the bedroom, which I was a horrible drummer, and I didn't even know the basics. I'd set my drums up in there. I had to take them down and set them up every time because they took up the whole bedroom once I would set them up.
Yeah.
I remember cranking System of a Down on my stereo and trying to play these weird time signatures and stuff that they were doing that I'm like, I can't even do a 4/4 like, but I'm trying to do all this stuff. My mom totally put up with it. She was like, fine with it.
Yeah.
Not fine with it. I'm sure she was like wanting to blow her head off, but she did not tell me to stop.
I got to say, yeah. I mean, same thing. I mean, even if my mom was strict in some capacity, but when it came to like playing music, and I guess, my dad being a drummer helped, but I was already remember,
broken in by that point.
Yeah. But I remember like just playing with, kids in the neighborhood or even like in high school, just making this terrible noise in the basement, playing so loud. And my mom's in the kitchen, just doing her thing, dealing with it. They never, told us to stop, and they never had a problem with it. And, again, looking back on that is like pretty special. You know what I mean? It's like, it's cool to have parents that are supportive like that. Cause I mean, that doesn't always exist. And at the same time, I don't blame parents who might not put up with that stuff.
No.
No. I couldn't blame them to be honest, if they did want to, shut us down, but
no, not at all.
But
I mean, I'm really lucky because like now I've got this space, so my son has like expressed interest in learning drums and has taken a little bit of drum lessons, and it's great because I can just be like, sure, go out there and play. I don't have to hear it. I just close the doors. All right, cool, we're good, because it's a totally separate from the house situation.
No, that's nice.
Double walls and double doors and everything, so it's like, close the door. All right, go ahead. Go wild, kid. Have fun.
No, it's very cool.
We play together sometimes. It's pretty fun. He's working on it.
Nice, man.
It's good stuff.
I mean, it's cool. It's cool for your son because, to just have that stuff around. Even if you're not actively, or, as a kid, actively jumping at it, or, if you're just like learning or getting into it, at first, just having it around is so much more like useful, and it gives you like such an advantage. You know what I mean? To be able to just like see it firsthand. You know what I mean? Like
to know that people could do it. I saw my dad playing guitar, and I knew that was a thing that people could do because you just grow up with it. It becomes normalized. And I remember watching some kids who were just a little bit older than me play, because I'd grown up. I'd seen like country bands and things that were mellower, and it was just like, I mean, maybe they were 5 years older than me or something, playing rock songs, and I was like, "Whoa, you can do that too! Interesting."
Yes, yeah.
Like, I thought that was for other people for some reason, not for me. But it was like, well, these kids can do it.
No, exactly. Yeah, seeing it firsthand. So I remember watching, my dad playing the drums, either in the basement or he would just be playing on the steering wheel, like in the car. Because whenever we were in the car, there was always music playing. So I actually like learned how to play, or I learned the concept of how the drums worked just by watching them.
Mm-hmm.
And I played myself when I was a kid, but just learned like basic stuff. And I started off actually on drums, just picked it up from watching him. And then, after a while, I'm playing the drums, and it's only the drums. It's not very musical, especially at that age when you're not playing anything good, right?
Right.
Doing that, but I'm glad that at least happened. So I was into music even more because of that. And then speaking about seeing it firsthand, I remember when I was like 12, I had a neighbor. I would go to his house all the time just to like hang out, and his older brother just got this guitar, like a little combo amp and like a Fender,
Mm-hmm.
and he started playing "Come As You Are" by Nirvana.
Mm.
And I never even saw a real guitar before up until then. And I remember just being like, oh my God, this sounds exactly like the record. This sounds exactly like what I see Kurt Cobain doing on MTV. Like my mind was blown. Like, oh, like this is like where the most rubber meets the road. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Before that, it was just banging on drums. And of course, it's relatable, but not as relatable as holy hell. This is literally the guitar riff, and it sounds exactly like it. So that's what actually like changed everything and sold me on guitar. And "Come As You Are" was the first song I learned.
Really? So that's
Yeah.
awesome. That
Yeah.
I'm sure that's not a totally uncommon thing. Nirvana was the first song "Smells Like Teen Spirit," but it was the first song I learned by myself.
Nice.
That was when I realized like, I can just, it's like that. And I just taught myself all on my own. That opened up a whole, I'm like, look what we can do now.
Exactly.
Like,
it's cool.
Mm-hmm.
I feel lucky, like, especially with starting to learn how to play guitar. I'm a 90s kid, and it was all that stuff on MTV, all the grunge era and everything beyond that too. But a lot of it, like Nirvana, was just so relatable, and it wasn't like Kerry King ripping solos and stuff like that. You know what I mean? Where that's just like, oh my God, that's just
like, how am I going to do that?
That's like a god that I would never even imagine being able to do. But then Nirvana was like, oh man, you see it actually happening, like in front of your eyes when you see other people playing it, and then you're able to do it, and you're like, oh my God, like I'm actually doing it. Like this is real, and that probably is why I kept doing it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
If it was earlier on and I was learning something different, again, maybe it was Metallica or Slayer or whatever it was, and if I probably couldn't play it as quickly as I could play other songs, maybe I would have just quit, sooner, or didn't think it was possible. So I never even really thought about that until talking about that right now. But it is cool, especially with Nirvana.
And did you start on electric?
I did. I started on an electric. My first guitar was just some no-name brand. It was actually, I think it was called a Lotus.
Lotus? Okay.
Lotus. And it was an actual, like the logo was a lotus flower. But I got it from some music store that was in the mall near my house. And I got a little crappy PV combo amp, and didn't know anything about the guitar, but it was cheap. And I picked up that thing. It was probably like $100, probably not even.
Maybe it wasn't crappy. Maybe it was the same amp that Josh Homme used on that Queens of the Stone Age stuff. Who knows?
But that was like the first guitar I ever got. Just some like no name thing. And then to be honest with you, I never ever had a real Fender guitar. I have a Fender bass, P bass.
Right.
But actually thinking back on it, it was always Ibanez or Epiphones or Gibsons, Jacksons. I had used PRS at one time. But I never actually had a real Fender guitar.
Interesting.
Crazy.
But now that you say that,
I never thought about that. It's pretty wild.
As much as I love Fender, and I played lots of Fenders that I like, and I have Fender style guitars that other people
I did have Strat. So the Lotus that I was talking about, that was a Strat like style. So I did have Strat style guitars, but just not an actual Fender. But it is funny because we're talking about Nirvana and how that was life changing. But yeah, man, that's funny. I never thought of
that. When you said that, I was thinking like, wait a minute. I was like, no, I got one Fender. I've got one Fender. Well, one Tele Custom in the arsenal, and I do love that guitar with a passion. But now that you say it, I was like, huh, yeah, all my Fenders are not Fenders except for that one.
Yeah.
They're all made by somebody else.
Well, I
love
guess
Fender.
I'll either blame or thank the fact that I've been living in Brooklyn and Manhattan for almost like the past 10 years, and it's the smallest apartments and living spaces imaginable. So I downgraded a lot, and I got rid of so many guitars.
Oh no.
And gear in general. But I guess, my wallet thanks me for that. But if I had a house or if I had a bigger space, I probably would have tons more gear and guitars, But
I'm like sick and broken.
Hi, I'm Vincent, and I'm here to talk about the Mercury X. My dad's always going on and on about how cool Maris is. He really went off on one about the Mercury X the other day. He said something about a 4,800 hertz sample rate and 99 preset locations and 33 banks, and something along the lines of the most advanced reverb pedal ever devised by man? That's all true, but I only care about one thing. This pedal sounds sick. So make sure you check out the Mercury X and all the other fine products at maris.us, as well as fine retailers worldwide. All right, Dad, now can I have my Pocky?
How exactly do artists get their music on Spotify, Apple Music, Deezer, Tidal, all these services? How in the world do you get your music there? Well, in the past, you had to use something called a record label. But these days, you can use DistroKid. DistroKid is the absolute easiest way to get your music up on streaming services. And it's the most affordable way to do so. Not only do plans start at $22.99 for the entire year, that's less than $2 a month, DistroKid also does not take a cut of your streaming revenue, unlike some other services out there. Even better if you sign up by going to tonemob.com/distrokid. That's tonemob.com/distrokid. One more time, that's tonemob.com/distrokid. You'll get 30% off. That's right, 30% off their already extremely reasonable prices. So go to tonemob.com/distrokid and get your music out there.
And that I had like a room in a house, like a smallish room. And this is before I ever started down this as a career. And I was like, oh, it's getting full of guitars. What do I do? And I'm like, well, obviously the only logical thing to do is to build a completely separate space so you can get more guitars. That's
Nice.
totally reasonable and healthy.
Exactly. That's the way to do it, man. Hey, if you're going to do it, then do it,
And now I'm sitting there going like, am I gonna have to add on? Like, what am I doing? Like, this is I'm not selling guitars. That's absurd.
No, that's great. Hey, man, if you have the ability to and it's feasible, like, why not? And then of course it's cool. Years down the road, you have your son pass it down, or
that's right.
Just having that stuff. There's so much stuff, gear wise, and just other stuff in general that I regret not having anymore.
Sure. Yeah.
As you get older and as time goes on, but hey, man.
So what was that journey like? Like when you started with the Lotus?
Oh yes.
We talked about what you did have as far as like your main kind of go-to instruments. What did that look like?
So I mean, it switched so much. Especially when I was younger, I was like all over the place, just experimenting with different guitars and things. But I started taking guitar lessons for a few years shortly after I got into guitar and taught myself for a bit. And I had this guitar teacher. He was like, this was in the mid 90s, but he was like your typical guy from the 80s, just like long hair, leather jacket, high tops, ripped jeans.
Mm-hmm.
And he played like an Ibanez RG. And to this day, he's still hands down one of the most incredible guitarists I've ever seen in my life.
Mm-hmm.
He was a studio guitarist at the time and then teaching on the side. He was also, I don't know if you know the Trans-Siberian Orchestra.
Oh yeah.
He was affiliated with that and did a lot of work with them.
Oh wow.
Like he was like next level, and he taught like on the side. So I'm like 13 years old, and he is destroying the guitar. There's like smoke coming out of the fretboard, and I'm sitting there with like my jaw on the ground. But because of that, my first like real guitar, I saved all my money and I got an Ibanez RG.
Mm-hmm.
It was an Ibanez RG 270 DS, and it was a Floyd Rose.
Oh man!
And I didn't even know what a Floyd Rose was. I just got it because I thought it was so cool that he had it.
Sure.
And I remember getting it. And I remember the first week I tried to like drop D, change a string here and there, and the whole guitar is wrecked because the Floyd Rose is just completely out of whack. And I'm just like, what the hell? Oh my God, what did I do?
I broke it.
Yeah, and I actually brought it into my lesson, and he started laughing at me. But yeah, so that was my first real guitar. But then from there, I bought a lot of stuff used. I would just like save up my money, buy a guitar. I had a couple of Epiphones because I couldn't afford a Gibson at the time.
Mm-hmm.
I found a really good deal. I found like a PRS. I think it's CE24, but it was like less than $1,000, and that thing was like $2,500. Like I'm sure now. But I would buy guitars, a guitar, use it, and then I would aspire to get another one. So then I would sell the current one and then have money saved and buy like the next one. So I never really had a lot at the same time, but I was always just jump around. And it was more just like experimenting. Like I was never like a heavy gear guy.
Mm-hmm.
I always just utilized what I had. But then guitar wise, sorry, I'm like bouncing around. Guitar wise, I always ultimately just was drawn to like Les Paul, either bodies or Les Pauls themselves. So that's all the guitars that I play now. I have ESP, LTD, and Gibsons, all Les Pauls, or the Eclipse version for ESP.
Right.
And then so pretty much like in college, that's when I started solely just playing Les Pauls. I had Les Paul Studio. That was my first Gibson that I finally got to in college after like selling guitars and doing all that. But yeah, so that is like pretty much my go-to when it comes to guitar itself.
Yeah, I feel that.
Yeah,
like Les Pauls are like home for me.
Yeah,
so it's just I don't know. Every time I pick one up, I'm like, this is it. This is what a guitar feels like, and it's probably just because I spent so much time, early on. My parents were able to get a smoking deal on a Les Paul special for my graduation present. And so I played that for years as my only guitar. So every time I pick that thing up, I'm like, oh yeah, it's home. Here it is.
Honestly, it's like, it just feels so natural. It's rugged.
Mm-hmm.
You could beat it up, especially like the music that like we're playing. But I always was just drawn to it. To be honest, other than like a Strat style, I thought so many other guitars, like bodies and styles, are just weird, so unnatural. Like an SG. Gibson SG, the thing sits like horizontal. It doesn't sit on you correctly. Or I'm just speaking for myself. I know there's probably a lot of like crazy like gearheads that might freak out, but it just sits weird, right? So I always hated SGs because it just felt weird. Then like Firebird or like those longer guitars, you realize with the longer body, the like the bridge is up further.
Yeah.
To like, your left, if you're, So I feel like I'm playing over to the side in like this weird way. So I never liked those guitars. And then Ibanez like RGs and all that. I love those back in the day. You could like fly on those.
Yeah.
Completely shred on those. They're so easy and like butter. But then they always felt like too brittle when I was playing, too like sensitive. I felt like I was gonna like break the neck off. So yeah, man, it was always just Les Pauls that I fell in love with, the first time I played it, and then I always stuck to that after the fact. I'm like, man, I was missing out this whole time.
Well, there's something. So, especially around the time you guys got started, it seemed like a lot of people in hardcore were playing Les Pauls, like a lot.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. Like,
definitely in metalcore too. Like
I started Incendiary. I had a Gibson Studio. A lot of people were playing Gibsons or like a lot of LTDs. Everybody had those. Like the EC or like the Eclipse version of the LTD.
Yeah.
You saw a lot of those. And then, I think metalcore, there was a lot of LTD going on.
Definitely. A lot of Les Paul body shapes.
Exactly. Yeah. The Les Paul body shape. Exactly. And it's crazy. Nowadays, it's back to almost to like the 90s. It's all
Fenders.
like Fenders, like that. And then if not that, more like Jacksons. Right? Like Jackson. And then I've even seen like Ibanez RG like styles, like similar to the Jackson.
Definitely.
But it's cool how that's all like coming back and goes in waves.
It's kind of funny because like, brightly colored, kind of weird 80s pointy guitars fell out of fashion for so long. And then it's like anything. Once it's gone for long enough, they become cool again somehow. And now I'm like, I want a brightly colored pointy guitar.
Actually, it's so funny. I think about that too. It's it is cool. Like it's such a like unique timestamp from when, especially when it was like big, in the 80s, especially. But it's awesome to just see that back. And again, just the way younger bands, just even fashion. I mean, it's just 90s fashion is everything that I used to wear when I was in grade school. I sound like such an old man, but like, but it's like literally all the clothes and probably a lot of the instruments, that I had and was wearing at the time. It's literally exactly what bands are doing now, which is so cool to me. I love seeing it.
I had a really funny moment yesterday. I'm like I was born in the late 80s, but I'm more like a early 2000s kid is kind of when I started coming into my own. And I saw a kid, no joke, in my neighborhood. Kid's probably, if I had to guess, probably 14. He's wearing a Slipknot t-shirt with like Janko style pants.
Hell yeah.
Skateboarding, and I was like, the kids are gonna be fine.
So awesome. I love that. It's cool. Again, kids now have to probably fold up their right pant leg to jump onto a bike so their giant jeans don't get like caught in a chain. It's like that only happened in the 90s, but now they're doing it again. Awesome.
I'm like, hey, we've been there before. We've done this. I've seen this. I know how this works. You'll get into some skinnier pants one of these days.
Exactly.
You'll realize it's not worth the hassle.
Yeah, but it's great. Yeah, man, I love it. I love seeing that.
I just saw this kid ollie. Like I was driving my car and he ollie. I'm like, that kid could have been ripped out of like 2003. Like, and I would have believed it. I was like, that is made me smile. Like, Slipknot shirt. I was like, yes, this is great.
Also remarkable for a lot of those bands. A lot of the bands that we grew up with are still killing it. Still bigger than ever, and just inspiring kids now as they were for us. Which is that's amazing.
I had a real pinch me. Well, I've had a lot of pinch me moments associated with this podcast, but I had a real big one last year. I mentioned the drumming the System of a Down earlier. And I was at Gear Fest at Sweetwater doing interviews, and I got to interview Shavo. And I was like, nice. Whoa, this is full circle for me. This is wild. And he was super cool. It was great.
That's so cool, man.
Yeah. So it was and that kind of does show like the staying power of some of that, like the cream of the crop. It's exactly. It still means something to people.
Yeah, exactly. And there's a reason why they were as successful. Back then, and you see like there are a handful of bands that they just kept up like the integrity. They kept doing what they wanted to do. They didn't jump on the bandwagon with the rest of the world at the time. And most of the bands that I still love, that are still better than ever, you see like what they did. You didn't realize it at the time. And it's something that I appreciate so much more now, like as I'm older. Like Deftones is one example.
Love Deftones.
I was having a conversation recently. They're like accidentally, unintentionally, probably my favorite band. Just because I have listened to them since their first record. They're one of the only bands that I love every release that they have. Their releases get better and better as time goes on, and it's 2023, like unbelievable. And it's just crazy that how many bands from that time, from the early 90s, mid to early 90s, still exist and have respect. They're still respected amongst their peers and and the fans.
Yeah.
It's pretty amazing.
My friend Dewey, he has a podcast called the Peer Pleasure Podcast, and he lives local here, and we've become good buddies. He has a hilarious Deftones story because, he was in a band or several bands. He was actually in Portugal the Man back in the day, and like he's definitely had experience, with a lot of the same stuff that you have.
Right.
But I can't remember when, but he got out of all that, got into a trade, and started his podcast. I don't know, maybe around the same time I did, but he's just on Instagram one day, and oh man, my mind's blanking on the exact details. I'm trying to remember. Let me look at this real quick. Deftones. I have it saved. It's so funny. Nice. Yeah, okay, got it. I remember this now. So he gets a message from this account that doesn't look like anything. He's like, "Hey, this is Chino. I'm a big fan." And there's like those weird celebrity impersonation accounts that go around that send.
I mean, that's actually what I was instantly thinking when you just said that. So,
and that's kind of what Chino's personal account. It doesn't look like anything. He doesn't post anything. He's not super active.
Yeah.
And I think he's private too. So there's just it doesn't look like much at all.
Mm-hmm.
And so Dewey fortunately had some friends, and he sent the message because the guy sent his phone number. He's like, "Chino from Deftones? I don't know. Like, I'm not sure about this." So he contacted some people that he knew, and they were like, "Yeah, man, that's Chino."
Wow.
He's like, "What?" And so he calls it. Next thing he knows, he's talking to Chino. He's like, "I'm just a really big fan of your show, and I found out you were local, and I thought maybe we could meet up." And
get out of here! Wow.
Yeah, Chino's been on his show twice now, but it was kind of just like this weird.
That's so contact.
It was just such a strange thing.
That's so cool, man. But honestly, that story right there, though, that is perfect example of, again, I think, why I love them and respect them so much. Like they are the most, or again, they at least present themselves as the most just down to earth, straight up dudes. You could see it through their music, right? It's reflected through their music too. But like just something like that, people of that status, I don't think it would be common for them to be just directly reaching out to someone like that, or just giving props to someone because they were like a fan, like that easy. When because like he doesn't have to do that, but
no,
that is very cool. It's very cool that he would do something like that, and lives up to everything that I assume, or at least hope that they're like.
I've only heard good things. I know he lives like 10 minutes from my house, but I don't know where. Chino, how you doing?
That's so good.
Can you come on my podcast?
Hell yeah, dude. That'd be amazing.
Like, get out of here, you weirdo. Get off my lawn. But yeah, you should check those out. I mean, I'll send them to you.
Yeah, dude, I'd be down for that. Nice.
They're really good episodes. Dude's very good at what he does. But
awesome.
I wanted to. I can't believe we got this deep into this episode and I haven't got to this. How did you get into hardcore? Like, how did you even? I mean, we totally just bounced all over the place. How did that happen for you?
So hardcore, like I said, man, like I grew up listening to like everything, and I don't know about you, but like when I was younger, heavy music was heavy music. So whether it was, again, Metallica, Pantera, 9 Inch Nails, Rage Against the Machine, Korn, whatever it was just heavy music. I just loved that type of thing. I never even really knew that different genres and scenes and worlds even existed. So it was probably just before high school or at the beginning of high school. I heard about this one band. They're called Vision of Disorder, VOD. Okay. They were from a town that wasn't far from where I was, and not too much older. Like I think they were like maybe in high school or college time. And I would hear about them and I would see their stickers everywhere.
Okay.
So I remember I was taking guitar lessons and I would wait for my mom to pick me up. And outside of the store where I would take lessons, there was a VOD sticker on the traffic pole at this corner where I would work. And they had they had a very cool logo. And I remember just being like, all right, I have to like just buy this CD or check out this band. I keep hearing about it. And I went and bought the CD and I listened to it and it blew my mind. The singer, Tim Williams, I think he arguably has like one of the best screams in heavy music. I still
Mm-hmm.
still love him to this day. But that kind of opened up the floodgates of that world because again, I didn't really know that it really existed. And then, like we were saying, I would look at the inserts of that CD, like the one that I got, and then others. You read about the bands that they thank and shout out. So from there, you hear about Sick of It All and Indecision and
Mm-hmm.
the rest of that whole world and seeing that was going on. And then it kind of like snowballed from there. Um, there was a New York hardcore documentary that came out, I think in like the late '90s that
sounds vaguely
that one of my
familiar.
neighbors got a hold of. I remember watching it, and VOD is actually in it. And I remember being like, "Oh my god," because I didn't know what VOD looked like. I didn't know what the shows looked like either. So I remember seeing the documentary, and it was like a DIY documentary filmed with like VHS camera, and it showcased all of the mostly New York City bands at the time,
Mm-hmm.
but Agnostic Front, Crown of Thorns, 25 to Life, VOD, ton of other bands. But that documentary, again, it was like shortly afterwards, I saw that documentary, and that's where you saw the footage of the shows because
Right.
you're not seeing it anywhere else. Wasn't on the internet. The internet barely existed. You're not seeing it on MTV or anywhere. So that was what really kind of like opened my eyes to the scene and like what was going on. Like, oh my god, I've never seen anything like this before in my life. I would see big concerts. I've been to big concerts, but when you see like the hardcore world and like what's going on there, it's just regular kids. It's kids
Mm-hmm.
that I see, walking down the street, like just
Just going insane.
It's right there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that's really what introduced me into hardcore, and then like Long Island, especially like that has always had a strong, prominent scene. So you start hearing about shows, and just going, to local gigs that are going on, and then you start meeting people, and then you start making friends with people, and it's a whole like just world, and
Mm-hmm.
it becomes part of your life. You know what I mean? The music is a big part of it, but then again, you're just surrounding yourself by that and the people. So that's kind of like how a lot of us and people from Long Island, at least, and New York, got into it. I know it might not have been as prominent in other areas, but it did exist, obviously, but
Sure.
different areas. I think there's different ways of kind of finding it and getting into it at that time, obviously.
Well, and that was just a
Different
really
now.
influential scene and area for all of the other ones as well. Like here in Portland, we didn't really have bands like that. We had like Poison Idea, but that's not the same thing, right? They're great in their own way, but it's a completely different vibe and a completely different feel. And we had some bands that were kind of like that, but nothing like Agnostic Front or Sick of It All or none of that stuff. It just was there's just something more like about about that. Like I don't know how to describe it exactly.
Well,
other than that.
you know what?
Yeah.
I mean, the core of it being in New York City, I think helps. There were a ton of other bands. Again, like Vision of Disorder. They were a Long Island hardcore band from Long Island, an hour from the city. They were kind of like an anomaly to how they became big or known like in that world. But for the most part, it was all New York City based, or and then Brooklyn, Queens around it, because just a big city in nature. I mean, the biggest city in the world, or one of, as far as that type of thing goes. So I think that obviously helps,
Yeah.
And
were you already playing at this point?
Yeah. So I was already playing for a while at that point. So I want to say that this was probably like 1998, 1999. So I was like just getting into high school. And again, I was still always listening and playing other types of music. Hardcore was this, floodgate and whole world that I got into. But as far as musically, I always still listened to everything else, amongst that. And then hardcore was just like this new thing that I never even knew existed, and was very refreshing.
We are brought to you today by Sweetwater, specifically the Gear Exchange. You may have heard about this. This is a place where you can go to buy and sell your used gear. Maybe you got a pedal over there that's just kind of collecting dust. maybe there's something you've been eyeing from the Sweetwater catalog. Well, right now is a great time to turn that unused gear into something you're actually going to use. Even better, if you sell on the gear exchange, you can keep 100% of the sale as long as you choose a Sweetwater gift card as your payout method. That is not too shabby because, let's be honest, most of this buying and selling we do is just to fund new gear purchases, and that is a great way to reach a wide variety of customers and keep 100% in your pocket, or rather on your pedal board. So go check out the Sweetwater Gear Exchange and turn that unused gear into something that's actually going to help you write that next huge riff.
Hello there. I'd like to introduce you to your new best friend, the Chase Bliss Audio Lossy. Lossy is a collaboration between Chase Bliss and Good Hertz. And it's meant to give you some control over those weird digital artifacts that come with very compressed audio. You're hearing it right now. All the changes that are taking place are strictly coming from my playing dynamics. I'm just interacting with the pedal and letting it do its thing. In some true stereo goodness. If you'd like some more details about Lossy, I'd invite you to head over to chaseblinssaudio.com. I think you're gonna like what you find.
Yeah. Did it freak you out at all first time you saw what the shows looked like? Or were you immediately like, I got to go do that?
Oh, well, it's funny. So, like, the first show I ever went to, I saw Sick of It All. It was in a town called Bayshore out on Long Island. And I remember up until then, I only went to concerts. So I saw, I went to I've seen like Smashing Pumpkins, the Beastie Boys, Black Sabbath, but in giant arenas.
Mm-hmm.
This is the first time I'm going to a show, and it's at, it was at like a bar, almost like a giant bar, so like a couple hundred people you could fit in there. And I remember the first band is going on. Sick of It All is headlining. It's the start of the show, and I'm down to see the first band. So I literally go and stand in the middle, in front of the stage, be like, "Oh, This is sick! I got the best seat in the house.
Why is nobody else here?"
Unbelievable. And then it's funny. I see the singer. The band gets on stage, and it's this guy. He's wearing a jersey that says "Sworn Enemy," and I'm like, "Oh, that's cool." Which another legendary band, but I didn't realize at the time. But he's wearing his own band's
Merch,
jersey,
right?
Which again, I didn't even know that it was Sworn Enemy until after the fact. But then the second they start, everybody just starts piling on. I remember seeing one kid in the corner of my eye jumping off like a table that was off to the side, up over my head, and I instantly just went into a panic. So I just like crawl my way out of this insanity, and I go off to the side, and I found safety next to the stage actually. So it was cool because I was like, I was able to see the band playing from the side of the stage, but then watching the crowd and just being in awe, just being like, I cannot believe I'm looking at this in person. Mm-hmm. Again, I saw clips of it before, like on video, but just now I'm seeing it in person. And that again was just like another step to, just leading me down that route of being like, man, I need to be a part of this. Or I need to keep going and seeing these bands, and I need to be a part of this myself. So yeah, it was very scary, but eye-opening and beneficial at the end of the day. So I lived to tell the tale. I'm glad.
You did. But was it weird for you as you got a little bit older and then sort of became the band? You became the band, and watching all these kids go nuts. That had to have been a little bit of a surreal moment, I imagine.
Yeah, it's crazy. So as far as, Incendiary goes, so we've been a band for 16 years, which is wild, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we, we don't ever really tour full time, and we weren't ever a full-time band. Mm-hmm. We do everything in spurts. We all have full-time jobs, but anything outside of work, we dedicate to this band. So that's how we were able to sustain and keep doing our thing. But when we started the band, we had no intention on doing anything beyond playing a couple of local shows, maybe opening up for our friends who were all in bands at the time. So we all played in bands before that. Some of us toured, just did stuff more full time, but we got it all out of our system, and then we're ready to kind of just like, again, do it on the side, but just
like
have
weekend warrior type of thing.
Exactly. So yeah, man, it's crazy. It's like this weird happy accident where we just started off just doing our thing, and when we still do, but just literally doing it to have fun, play ourselves, play these small shows, and that's it. Then it kind of like grew and grew. It was a slow burn. When people really started to, like, I guess, know who we were in that world, or become that band, like you said, at least like known.
Yeah,
it was years. I mean, there were like 5-6 years that we were a band that nobody really cared, but we were more than happy. We were doing more than we ever imagined. You know what I mean? So started playing local shows. Then we could go to Jersey on this one Saturday and play. Oh man, it's out of state. Awesome. Oh, we could go to Albany and then swing over to Connecticut. We could make it a weekend. Oh, now we could like fly over to California. Like, it was just a slow, random thing. We would get the offers. We never planned on doing anything. So then fast forward to now, the fact that I'm even talking to you because we're doing this and we have a new record coming out is insane. Again, it is, every single thing we have done has been way more than all of us have imagined in the band. And it is like an unbelievable position to be in. It's so awesome. Just the way that it all panned out, just organically, I'm very thankful for too. I think it's very cool, and I like how it kind of just happened. You know what I mean? There was no plan, really. And a lot of our friends or peers, as we get older, were always like, "Man, I wish we could do like the Incendiary, do it the Incendiary way. Play on the weekends, do this and that." And it's like, first off, anybody can. We did it, so anybody can. It's not rocket science. But then also, I mean, yeah, man, it's like, there's no formula to it. We literally we didn't even know that this record was coming out, or we were going to even write it. We don't even know what we're doing next year. Like, honestly, we do not plan anything. We literally strike while the iron's hot. We embrace all the opportunities we get. We have nothing but gratitude for the people who give us the opportunities and the people that support us. But it's like, yeah, dude, it's unbelievable for it to all be as, I guess, successful, for lack of a better word, based on like what we started off to do. Because again, we never like, I say care, in the context of,
it wasn't the career.
We were never trying to do anything. So we never tried to do anything but to have fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course, everything we've done, everything I've always done, writing wise, playing wise, I care 100%, and we put our full effort into it. But yes, it was all for fun, still is for fun, and nothing beyond that, honestly. So yeah, man, it's like we're in a really special position, which I'm thankful for.
I mean, I totally relate to that. I did music for my whole life as a side thing. It was always, but I've explained it in a way that I'm not sure comes across right. It's like, I didn't really have a choice. Like, I love music so much, I'm gonna play music. I'm going to play music.
Yeah.
I never had any thoughts growing up that I would be able to do it for a career. Like, I didn't know I would have anything to do with the music industry other than it costing me a lot of money to go to shows and buy a bunch of guitars. Like, that's what I thought was going to be my contribution to the music industry.
Yeah.
And so, but now, granted, I did make a concerted effort in 2015 to get into this, but that's just because I just became obsessed. But I totally relate to the, like, I'm going to do something else, and I love this, and I'm going to continue to do it, but it's not going to be my career. We made a whole record, me and my band, that we're very proud of, and we put years of our life into making it, just entirely for selfish reasons, because we wanted to do it. Like, there was we didn't make any money on it. we
sure.
knew we weren't going to make any money on it. We're like, we got to get this out of our system is really what it was.
Exactly. And honestly, I mean, yeah, so I fully understand what you're saying, and I'm so thankful now. You know, when I was younger, I wasn't like desperately trying to be like, oh man, I have to be in a full-time band and like do this for the rest of my life. But I always wanted to be in it, and I did want to do it as my career when I was younger. I didn't know what, so I went to school for music for a year, and then I worked in studios. I did a ton of different things, and I realized during that time, whenever I was doing it, either for school or for work, and it was full time, I actually did not like music. I didn't like playing the guitar, and I started to dislike it because I had to do it. Music was always something that I gravitated towards as an outlet, something to get away from the real world or stress or whatever. And now I'm like, oh man, music is now causing all my stress, and and I'm required to do it now.
Right.
And it's not for fun. And that is part of the reason why I was like, all right, well, I'm glad I did the things that I did in the past, and I'm glad that I learned all the things that I did. But that's actually a big reason why I'm like, all right, I'm just going to do something separate, and I'm going to always be in music and do it, but not do it because I have to, and I'm going to have more love for it.
Yes.
So, yeah. So I think that's 100%. A really cool thing, and I think a lot of people realize that when they're older. Also, it's easier said than done. It's not like, oh, let me sign up to be a rock star and make millions and do this for the rest of my life. I mean, you know what I mean? I'm sure if a lot of us,
hardcore scene.
Yeah, but I'm sure if a lot of us could do that, it'd be a different story. But yeah, it's reality. It's the way the world works, and you have to come to terms with that and realize that. I think I did it and realized that stuff early on. But I'm thankful for the way it all panned out. And again, doing it for fun and on the quote unquote doing it on the side or not doing it full time, I think is like, it's almost like helped all of us in our band and helped our band kind of last also.
Yeah, I was going to say, it certainly has helped your longevity, because it's like, well, this doesn't have to quote unquote work. Like, it just needs to work for us. It doesn't need to work for anyone else. It doesn't have to be bringing in a ton of revenue. That's not the point. The point is just to do it.
Exactly. And, I think that attitude when it comes to the music that we write, I think helps, because not that we would alter anything, but I understand when a full-time real band, right, does their thing and they're cranking out records. I understand your sound has to evolve in a way where you need to sell tickets. You need to be palatable. You need to attract as many people as possible, because you need to keep doing it. I understand that. And I think whether it's directly or indirectly, that just happens. And you're also required to be cranking out so many more records than if you were in like our position, right? So the fact that we don't have to really be concerned with that. Everything we're doing is as pure and raw, and what you see is what you get as far as like the music that we write and everything. And I think, or I would hope that that's why a lot of people, are into what we're doing. If anything, I hope like that's like the main reflection that we have is like, it is as real as it gets. We literally don't do anything or write anything unless we think that it's good and we like it ourselves. Like,
right.
There is nothing else that we ever do or take into consideration. And thank you to everybody who's like into that. So that, and then the fact that, again, when we're playing shows, the shows that we do play, we'll be playing in Chicago. Awesome. Everyone's coming out because they don't know when we're going to be back, and we don't know when we're going to be back.
So you know what I mean? Better show up.
No, but you know what I mean? So it's funny. So like that has also helped us too, we're not oversaturating cities and people aren't getting sick of us. I think it's helped everybody, you know what I mean? Us as a band and the people who are into our band. Yeah. So, it's all that stuff, that there are a lot of benefits to it. And, and even the way that we operate and just, I don't know, just how much we don't take this for granted. And when we are playing shows and whatever we're doing, like we are 110% like in it and love it. And it's not like it's our, 60th show in a row and we're completely burnt out and, this fest is like any other fest that we've played, like whatever, just add that to the schedule. Like, no, man, like we are so psyched and thankful and beyond, just beyond happy to like do everything that we do.
Mm-hmm.
So, hopefully that shows.
That's super cool.
Yeah.
Man, the time flew by on this one.
That's awesome, man. That's sick. I love that.
Great. I was just looking at the clock like, oh man, I felt like that was like 20 minutes, but
that's always the best. That's always the best rather than the kind of like, scrounging for stuff to talk about or,
Yeah, we just go. I could tell. That's right cool. when we picked up the phone there, or not the phone, but you know what I mean.
Yeah,
once we hopped on, I was like, oh yeah, this is gonna be a good one.
No, man, that's sick. I love it. I love it.
Yeah. So I have a couple classic questions I like to wrap the episodes up with. But before I do that, I like to give the guests the opportunity to take the stage. You're talking to a few thousand people right now. You can say whatever you want to say. You can shout out your aunt. You can plug anything you want to plug. You can do whatever you want right now. Nice.
Well, we have our new record coming out on May 26th. It's called Change the Way You Think About Pain. Mm-hmm. Comes out on Closed Casket. And we're beyond psyched to have that going on. We have a bunch of shows lined up. One of them is our record release, which is on June 17th in Brooklyn. Cool. So that's something that we're looking forward to. And then if you go to our site, Incendiary HC, that's where all of our show dates are. Incendiary HC is our handle. So on all social media, that's where, you could find us. And I'm just very, very excited for what's going on now. And, excited to be talking to you too, Blake. So thanks for having me.
Thank you. And that website will be linked down in the show notes for all the podcast listeners. It'll be very easy for you to find. So go check that out. And check out the band, everybody. All right, here we go. Classic questions. First one. What is your favorite Boss pedal?
Man, my favorite Boss pedal. I've always went to Boss too. For some reason, I always had Boss pedals.
I love Boss
throughout my life. You know what? So actually, interestingly enough, on this latest record, we were using in the studio the Dun Effects Death Knob. I don't know if you're familiar with that. Basically, what that is, it's a simple pedal with one dial, but it almost replicates the Boss HM2, the heavy metal tube pedal. And I had that pedal early on when I was a kid. So I guess I'll say that. I'll say the Boss HM2. And so basically, I didn't use it for really ever. I had it when I was a kid, used it a couple of times, lost it at some point, and I was like, all right, whatever. But again, fast forward all these years, Will Putney, who we were working with at the studio, he had this pedal.
Got such good.
Yeah, it's
everything
unbelievable.
He works on, he's incredible.
Unbelievable. But he had that pedal, and then he was telling us about it, and it's really funny that it's funny that there's a pedal to replicate that thing.
It's become really popular in the last few years.
Yeah. So I got to say that. So let's stick to that. The Boss HM2, just because it just it came full circle for me.
All right, I like that. That's beautiful.
Yeah,
beautiful. All right, classic question. This is the one, and for you, this is gonna be interesting because you're a New York person. So, what is your favorite kind of pizza?
Oh man. Yeah, so obviously you can't go wrong with pretty much any pizza you get around here. So aside from honestly just a regular slice, simple is like amazing. But I always loved Sicilian, right? A nice thick slice and a Sicilian corner,
yes,
slice. That's what you got to do, because you get those two crunchy edges. So I'd say that's like one of my favorites. And then I don't know if you want to get fancy, maybe like a buffalo chicken slice.
Okay, yeah.
Side of blue cheese. That's a good late night one.
I don't think I've ever heard a New Yorker go for the buffalo chicken before. That's a
good one. And actually, it's funny. I was just talking about this with my sister recently. I don't know if you've had this or have heard of it, but they make baked ziti slices.
I've heard about it.
which
I'm not
is
so sure how I feel about it.
the most outlandish, insane thing to even think about.
It is.
All right, we already have a slice of pizza. Let's throw a bunch of pasta and more cheese on this. It's absolutely savage to eat. But I remember eating those things all the time when I was in like high school and college.
Mm-hmm.
I would house like 3 of those things and then go out drinking and stuff. Which I would be asleep after eating one of them at this point.
Oh yeah, totally.
You know, so that's a good throwback. I mean, they still make it now, but I haven't eaten one in years because it's so crazy. So yeah, that's another good one for listeners if you get your hands on one of those. Baked ziti pizza, crazy.
I have to ask this because New York City is near and dear to my heart, even though I'm a West Coast boy. But I've always enjoyed New York City. It totally like changed my perception on what pizza can be when I went there.
Yeah.
So I do want to dive in a little bit nerdier. Like, do you have a favorite pizzeria or two?
Yeah, well, there was actually one called Rose's Pizza, and it was on the bottom of Penn Station for all you New Yorker, Long Islanders. Mm-hmm. But that place is gone now. So now I'll go to Joe's Pizza, which is a pretty popular one.
I love Joe's.
And then honestly, whatever one exists while I'm on the run is like fine. Honestly, also, I'm not even really a pizza snob, to be honest with you. I think the crappiest pizza is still good. I just love pizza. I think frozen pizza is great. Pizza from other states, like, hey, I mean, yeah, maybe it doesn't compare, but I think pizza is good regardless. So I'm not a hater on any other pizza, and I really love it all. That's one food I will eat. I can really eat all day, any day, no matter what.
I'm with you.
I'm down. Yeah. You know.
Yeah, like I'm thinking you're in Brooklyn, right? Did I get that right? Yeah. So Roberta's. I love Roberta's.
Roberta's is good, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The bee sting really opened my eyes to the hot honey magic.
Yes. No, it's good. And then there's there's Pauly G's.
Pauly G's right there.
Brick oven. Like that. That's like that's a whole different genre of pizza, but it's great.
It's so good.
Yeah.
Oh man. I can go all day.
You can't go wrong. I might have to have some for dinner now.
Good. Let me know what you get.
Yeah, dude.
I'll live vicariously.
Or if I don't want to eat for the next week, maybe I'll get a big ziti slice.
Ziti slice. Just go to sleep.
Yeah, exactly. I'll hibernate the next week.
Rob, thank you so much for coming on. We'll slide over to Patreon and see what kind of weirdness we can get into.
Nice.
Sound good?
Nice. Let's do it.
All right, everybody. For Rob, this is Blake. And as always, folks, good luck and good tones.
Alrighty, folks. There you go. There you have it. I hope you enjoyed that episode. Please make sure you go check out Incendiary's new album. It's about to drop. It's going to be awesome. Go to the link in the show notes and check out all the details on the band, where they're going to be, when the album's dropping, all that good stuff, and make sure you give them a follow on the socials as well. Thank you so much for hanging out with me, and if you need more of these conversations in your ear, please go to patreon.com/tonemob, where for $5 a month, you too can get extra episodes beamed right to your ears every single week. And this one is no exception. Rob was a gentleman and a scholar. He hung out with me. We nerded out on web development for a little bit, and I spoke way above my pay grade on that. And we did a lot of other fun stuff as well. We talked about aliens, and we brought it right back into 5150s and amplifiers and pedals and everything. So we made it all happen on the Patreon episode. So if you liked this one, you're probably going to like the Patreon even better. And I can say that pretty confidently for just about every single episode that is available there on the Patreon section of the podcast. So if you'd like to support the show and like to get some of the best content, please go over there and check it out. It helps out immensely. And if you can't do that, as always, please rate, review, support the show that way, share with your friends, all that good stuff. I know every content creator you know asks for that, but that's because it really does help immensely. So please do that. It would mean the world to me, and I would really, really appreciate it. So there you go. All right, folks, here you go. I hope you enjoyed that episode. I'll be back to my regular internet shenanigans very, very soon, and you can talk to me anytime at info@tonemob.com via email. Hit me up on the socials, all that good stuff. I'm available. You know where to find me. Join the Tone Mob Facebook group, all that good stuff. Thank you so much. I'll talk to you later. Bye.
One last thing before we totally sign off here. I just want to remind you that if you do any shopping at Stringjoy, that's Stringjoy guitar strings made in Nashville, that will help me out as well. As I've said for years, I'm heavily involved in that company, and I really do think they're making the best products on the market. So if you would like to try custom strings, go to tonemob.com/stringjoy and check them out today. I seriously love what the team down there is doing. I help them out with all kinds of things, and by you supporting them, you are also supporting me as well. And hey, you need some strings, so why not get some custom strings just for your guitar and playing style? Again, the link for that is tonemob.com/stringjoy, and that will take you right to their website, and you can do all your shopping through there, and that will help everyone involved out. So thank you very much. Talk to you next time. We are brought to you by the wonderful folks at Gun Street Wiring Shop. Yes, Gun Street Wiring Shop. I've talked about them before. I used to say based out of Bend, Oregon, but guess what? Sean moved to my neck of the woods. Sean's in Portland. Sean is awesome and has helped me with a bunch of stuff lately. And if you have wiring needs for your guitar, he can help you too. If you want to get weird with it, he can get weird. If you just need to spruce things up a little bit, there's your guy. He takes all the guesswork out of doing your guitar wiring, and he makes it simple, and his customer service is top-notch, and I can't say enough good things about Gun Street as a company. I really respect Sean and what he's all about, and the product is top-notch. I've got 3 different guitars that now have Gun Street harnesses in them, and I could not be happier. So go to gunstreetwiringshop.com and check them out.
Hey, this is Aaron from No Simple Road. I'm inviting you to come hang out with Apple, Mel, and I as we talk with the musicians, artists, chefs, authors, and beyond from the world that turns us on. We're reaching into the improvisational music scene, the psychedelic culture, the festival world, and getting to know what makes the people tick that create those scenes. Come join us on the long, strange trip over at No Simple Road.
Hey, this is Chris Swinney, formerly of the Ataris and currently host of That One Time on Tour, part of the Sound Talent Media Podcast Network. Have you ever wondered what it's really like on the road? The highs can be euphoric, but the lows can be crushing. Join me every week as I chat with industry pros about what it's like living out their wildest dream and, in some cases, their worst nightmare. Past guests of the show include members of NoFX, Pennywise, Bad Religion, and more. Listen and subscribe at soundtalentmedia.com.